ask. Well, I'm Peter Cetera, and I'm here in, I mean, I've been lucky. You know, I had enormous success with Chicago, and then I had basically my second career as a solo artist since 1985. And, you know, I'm not one to go out a lot and travel a lot and tour a lot. And when the orchestra thing came along, it was unique enough that it got my curiosity enough that I wanted to try and see what it was like. So I don't really have a favorite. Certain songs mean certain things. You know, If You Leave Me Now was actually the first #1 song that Chicago had, really, and it was a #1 worldwide. When I was with Chicago, we were landing to do a European tour. We landed in London about 6 in the morning, and we heard Top of the Pops was on, and with the #1 song, and it was If You Leave Me Now. So that song was special because of that thing. Glory of Love was because it was an Academy Award nomination, and it was in Karate Kid 2, and it was like you know, the first song that I had as a solo artist that came out with a #1 song. That's important to me too, you know. But there's a lot of songs that weren't hits that were on CDs, and they're just as important to me as the #1s are.
You were the inspiration.
You're the Inspiration. I actually wrote that song, or I started writing that song for Kenny Rogers. Remember him? He was looking for a song, and I was working with David Foster at the time, and I got the word looking for a song, and we wrote. Actually, David Foster called me up and he said, you know, I'm in the studio with Kenny Rogers, and he would like you to write a song for him. I said, you know, that's great. I said, as a matter of fact, I'm leaving for Italy. I was going to Europe for something. I don't remember. This was like 9 o'clock in the morning. I said, I'm leaving for Italy tonight about 5 o'clock. I'll be there about 2 weeks. I'll call you when I come back. He goes, no, he means like now. And I went, oh, he means now. Yeah, why? But thank you. And so David was in the studio, and of course, you know, last minute. And so I said, all right, well, you come over here right now, and we'll see what we can do. So in the midst of packing, David drove out to where I was then living. And we basically, in about 3 hours, came up with a little chordal structure for You're the Inspiration, which it wasn't called that at the time. And we sort of make this little tape of this chord structure. I took it on the plane, went to Italy, and of course lying in these beautiful Baroque and marble and rooms and seeing out the window, I was writing things about Michelangelo. You should know Michelangelo, and I came up with, oh, you're the inspiration. La, 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 la. Came back with the words, worked on this melody, and came back and presented the song, and he basically didn't either have the time or didn't want to do it. Good for me. So I sort of changed a couple of words, made it a little more generic, not so Italianish or whatever that word would be, if there was a word like Italianish.
25 or 6 to 4?
Well, 25 or 6 to 4, of course, is one of the old Chicago songs that I choose to include in this show. And, you know, Robert Lamb was one of the great songwriters of of that generation, and I always respected his writing, and I wanted to pay a little tribute to him, and of course to the group, and came up with a kind of what I think is a unique version of an old classic.
So what does Peter Cetera do when he's not singing home with his family, watching a Cubs game?
Don't even mention the Cubs. No. You know, it's funny because we're here in Salt Lake. Excuse me. And I do everything I can to be outside. I do, I do everything that I wanted to do when I was on the road all those years. I do any kind of sport, you name it, I'll do it. And of course, be with my family as much as possible, like, you know. And work now is becoming important to me again, and it's finally fun again, so here I am.